podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Jesse.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
Oh, man. So, it's spring again. You know what I'm saying? Cue the biz marquee. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And so, before we get in, well, I guess two things to touch on, but first of the two is, typically the conversation around fitness is always like, New Year's and, gym crowded in January and getting ready for summer and all kinds of, quite frankly, horseshit that is hilarious to think about, that like grown people still planning their life like summer break is coming or something, like like you can't wait for summertime. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be ready. I'm gonna be out there. Like, but whatever, man. Whatever gets you through the day. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but I can't help it. You know what I mean?
And for the record, I don't like all of you who come to the gym the first week of the year and ruin it for people who have been in the gym all season. I don't like when y'all do that, man, because I'm trying to get on the machines and y'all ate all through whatever holiday season, whether, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Festivus for the rest of us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatever you celebrate, New Year's, y'all celebrate, and now you want to come in and sit on the machines.
Yeah, man. Stop
and
that.
Take too much time. So I just want to let y'all know, like Justice is saying, if people you doing that next year, just start in November. Right. You know what I mean? Get comfortable. Just let it flow, man. But just stop sitting on them damn machines.
Yeah. So, but with that, my own, ups and downs around, health, fitness, and whatnot. Typically, for me, especially, I have not over the last few years, but one of my own, I've been, I go through cycles. I think, kind of like what I'm into, from an exercise perspective. There was a time when, I still practice martial arts, but like that was my primary, especially when we was, living younger, we was, down living in Oakland and various things. It was, I'd go do my Kung Fu, and me and Zine would get, do a little impromptu workouts here and there. And that was my fitness, right? Go do some ancillary lifting, always need a little bit of lifting in there because the scrumph work helps me get the angst out my body. But in light of this, a couple things dealing with my mom's health, and then basically injuring myself by sitting in a bad chair for a month. I was like, I gotta, I had to slow down with the capoeira last year because the place where, not really no particular energy, just sort of deterioration over time as a person over 40, it said, you know what, you probably can't do this, at least not in this form and at this size, right? And so in any event, I've been trying to like settle in like on what'll be sort of my fitness focus, because it helps me with any type of exercise and wellness to like kind of have a focus, like I'm doing this, right? So when I really a couple years ago went really hard on lifting and trying to get up to like, squatting 400 and deadlifting this and like really, when I started building it up, you know what I mean? And so right now, what I wanted to start off with just a little, spring touch base on like, fitness and exercise and like what you're doing or what you're working on, and share a little bit about what I'm working on, and, see, anyone that's listening, feel free to add on or maybe folks get something from that. So I'm a tip to you. I'm gonna give you the chest pass, you know what I'm saying, first, then I'll add on. First, but what's something that you focusing on. I mean, you've been, we've discussed you being out on the road, but like with the running, but where you at with it right now? What's up?
Yeah, no, and I think and this is important. I mean, like you made a good point about men over 40, and I'm gonna say people over 40, and then I'm gonna drill down a little more and say, original people, black, brown, and yellow folks over 40, just across the board. The body changes. And things that you could do that you took for granted, you shouldn't. And that's just the vanity external part of it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that like bone strength and bone mass and all this kind of stuff that like we have to be aware of. So along with the other broader things about physical wellness and going to the doctor and checkups and all those kind of things, like the actual importance of movement is more important than ever, right? Now, the unique thing about the pandemic, or at least in its most acute throes, right? Like people are still getting sick. So pandemic in its most acute throes, it was that, you had a lot of people who had to be still. And then from that, there were a lot of people who picked up things. We've talked before about me picking up, and becoming more of an avid runner during the pandemic, which I credit a lot with my mental and emotional health, frankly, during that time. And then since that time, only because I do think, the full effects of the pandemic and the mental and emotional challenges won't be kind of totally seen from years to come. But I do think even in the short term of it, there were kind of some winners and losers, obviously. But there were also people, depending on how you could have used the time or depending on the space you were in, it could have been a place for reflection. So that's, what I got into. And then there's this unique thing about like, because of the economics of our country and our world, it's kind of like you see people like, okay, it's time for the world to open now. This has been cool, but like you gotta go back to work now, or you got to work from home. We got to do something. Something has to change. So it threw people from this idea of like you might have had time to be home and reflect, and you might have gotten into yoga, you might have been running or biking or hiking, and then it's like you have to adopt many of the old patterns that you may have had, which we know, generally speaking, for many of us were not necessarily healthy, right? So, where I am is, obviously continuing to run, but also thinking about what kind of, to your point, strength training for myself as a 45-year-old man, what makes sense? You know what I mean? What's important? Any elements of machismo that come out, you figure out, you go to the gym and then you watching dudes squat 400 like you and lifting all kind of stuff and wiping the chalk off their hands and you know what I mean?
All hard and you're like,
clapping all hard. You know what I'm saying? And so you gotta be like, oh, I'm about to go throw some weight up too. Then it's like, dog, listen, man, that's what blow their hair back. You know what I mean?
Right.
You need to focus on being strong to do the things you're trying to do as possible, right? So to that end, along a steady diet of running, we introduced a lot of calisthenics. You know what I mean? So a lot of push-ups, pull-ups, dips. You know what I'm saying? Squats, lunges. You know what I'm saying? All those kind of things, and trying to do the things that also mirror movement and movements that I'll make within running. One of the goals with myself and a couple of our brothers is to do a half marathon in Toronto. So that's like a goal, and so we got prep out to make sure that you can, and not just run it. Like I don't just want to run it. I don't want to have to fall in nobody's arms. Like, oh man, 13.1. You know what I'm saying? To be able to like
you come in with the cramp.
Like limping towards the joint. Y'all watching me limp towards the. Y'all would invite to limp towards the joint, man. I would have. The table be cut far before I get there. But anyway, but yeah. So that, and then also one of the things I'll just share quickly is get into a practice of yoga, because to match and to also connect with kind of the mindfulness practice that developed through running, frankly, and the meditation practice developed through running, also to have another physical extension of that. I think is really important. And I think, you know, having a physical practice to mirror if you have mental practices of mindfulness and presence, whatever the one may be, whether it's any kind of martial art, any kind of, you know, those arts or practices have become important. So that's going to be another kind of big part of my broader wellness kind of practice for myself for the season. And I just want to also just note one thing that's important to note around these times, that like things like biking and running, and I'm pretty sure everyone here that is listening to this podcast already knows this, but they are not the domain and province of white people. And just like eating healthy and wellness and these ideas, we have to be really careful around interrogating or seeing these kind of things and saying that Black folks don't do it, or the colonizers, it's colonizer stuff. Like, it's not. Black people have been riding bikes for a long time. Major Taylor, please look at Major Taylor. Like, we don't have to have this conversation. And just because things might be commodified as being for, you know, rich white folks doesn't mean that that's what it is. And it doesn't mean, and we have to be careful not to obscure traditions in our own communities that have been happening just because people on Instagram or it looks one way on Instagram and one way in commercials. So PSA over.
Indeed. And so on 2 points. So like for me, I would like, so, you know, one of my focus and I halfwayed into it last spring, summer with like trying to just get back out on the road on my bike. Like I was pretty serious for a few years back, and like I said, I kind of transitioned and went a little deeper on the powerlifting and the, you know, scrumph, because I quite frankly enjoyed the scrumph, and I was like, you know, now I kept trying to like kind of straddle, like I'm gonna ride a bike a whole lot and be big scrumph guy, and I mean, they're not incompatible things. There's actually a lot of need if you're riding a bike a lot, because you have a concentric. You get kind of overloaded with the concentric work and not the eccentric work. So it actually is really important to do some eccentric work and eccentric loads and things to counteract all that forward pedaling that you do. But in terms of like, if I'm trying to get up to, you know, be able to do, 17 to 18 miles an hour regularly, you know, like, because, you know, one of the, at least in the way that coaching that I've received on the bike, and even in my experience of cycling, you know, it's an intensity and like, power to rate kind of dynamic of like, you know, so if you can ride, but like, so if you're going to tag up with some people to go for a ride, and you'd be like, oh man, like, even, you know, I know you experience this with the running, where it'd be like, oh, well, you know, what y'all ride, you know, what's the pace? You know, y'all doing like 9-minute miles, y'all doing,
man,
like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of is a similar thing where it's like, yeah, if folks is riding, like, at least in the past, like good, you know, you probably pretty good fit bike cyclist if you could do like 15 miles an hour, like for, you know, 2 hours, right? You know what I mean? And there's way faster, you know, like them pro people, they be doing like over 20 miles an hour for, you know, a whole, you know, for all afternoon type stuff. And, and so figuring out what you can manage, because it's hard to, you know, I like to say that I've had it happen to me a couple times on your bike. You could just start riding, but oh man, I'm feeling great. I'm just riding now. And then you'd be like, I done rode really far from where I live, and I gotta get back home. I'm tired.
Get back to the crib.
I'm tired now. I thought I had more energy than this. How many hills?
Oh, listen, it's the same thing with running. You got to get to a point of like, how far are you going? Right? Like sometimes I'd be like, yo, run downtown. It'd be like, okay, that's cool. But then I have to run back.
Gotta run back.
And it's not like you don't have the energy, but it's just like, man, I'm downtown now, man. So no, it definitely lends itself to just, you know what I mean, making sure you're clear about how you're moving and your pacing, actual fact.
Yeah. So like, but you know, and what I used to do, and this really helped with the training also, is setting like either a ride that I want to do, you know, as a target, right? So then I got to get up to the level of fitness to do that ride, you know, in a reasonable amount of time. One of the ones I did a lot of years here, this is a ride called Reach the Beach. And it actually, if you do the Century, which is 100 miles, starts really close to my house. Then it's like 75, 55, or 25. And I used to like doing the 55. Century, I mean, it's great to do one. And anybody that likes to cycle, I would encourage you to challenge yourself and do a century 1 year. After that, though, unless you really, 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 really like it does get somewhere you're like, I'm still on this damn bike. This is all day. Like I am done. I'm tired. I don't want to ride no more. It is definitely a challenge, but so I haven't pinned down, an event yet. But my basic goal right now is I'm trying to have the emergence of felt cycling justice. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, where people start sending me messages like, yo, Just, you good, man? Everything cool? Like you look, you're kind of getting thin over there. I'm like, I'm just getting my miles in, baby.
Can we do the intro for the black situation where you lose, where your body changes and black folks start asking you questions like, right. Is you okay?
Everything all right, man? Like, you been because it's either you got some kind of ailment, or they like, hey man, you white horse, man, what's going on? Like, you dabbling in something?
It's never good, right? What's crazy about that is like for you to fundamentally change your body structure. Mm-hmm. It's never, and people never say it's like, oh man, this has been great. There's always like either you sick or you got some addiction or you dealing with some sort of heartbreak.
Right. Yeah, you got some sort of wild familial stress. Like, so you ain't eating, you ain't sleeping right, and therefore you getting thin. And people be like, "You all right, baby?" Like, I'll never forget when, especially when we was younger. Like, I got real heavy, with the kung fu and everything, and shed a lot of weight. I went home with my grandma. I was like, she's like, what's going on with you, baby? You good? You eating up there? I was like, man, I'm cool. Like, I'm just real fit right now. You know what I'm saying? It's all good.
Listen, man. My mom said the same thing to me one time. When I lost weight, she was like, you look good, boy. Don't lose no more weight. She was like, don't lose no more weight. What do you mean? Don't lose no more weight. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that's it. That's also the whole different conversation of our in certain communities, the idea of how well you're doing or how well you're being taken care of being defined by girth.
Yes, right. You ain't got a little something, little softness around the belly. You know what I'm saying? Maybe things ain't going well. It's like, so like, what I wanted to do, and it's important to me, like with the spring, because the reality is at some point you have to go outside, and it's as hard as it is to run in the winter, or even when I do my walking, like in the winter, it is real hard to ride a bike in the winter. Like, you gotta really want it, like, to be out when it's cold. Like, you can't fake it with that. Like you said, with this under 30 and you about to go get some miles in, you can't lie about it. Like, you got to really be like, all right, I'm about to do this. Like, I got my gear on. I got the stuff I need. I got the right layers. You know what I'm saying? I got the mental set so that, once when you start that first couple minutes and it's still cold, because you're banking on the idea that once you get hot, right? Like, once you get warm, right, it's going to be all right. Like, you ain't going to feel how cold it is. But when it's really cold, it take a while if it ever feels like it ain't still freezing cold outside.
They tell you that whole 15, 20 degrees, and it does become real at some point. But depending on your body, how fast you're moving, that doesn't become real for about 10, 15 minutes. So it's still like the first 10, 15 minutes, if you're only going to run for 15 minutes, you might as well put a jacket on, because you're going to be cold the whole time. It's only after that time that it really kicks in. But I think to your point, those activities do require mental positioning, which I think in science has proven over and over again. I think ancient folks and original people in posterity have known this, but also there are certain kind of sports and activities that really prepare, like a need to be in a mental place to actually do the physical thing. And I think stuff like biking, things like running, you know what I mean? Like, you need to be at a place to do it. If you're not at a place to do it, you're not going to do it as well.
So, so like my goal right now, like, one is I do want to identify an event to do. And there's a couple. They haven't had it because of the pandemic. Like the last years, I don't think they made it last year. There's a Portland Century, which folks always joke about because it used to be so much food on the ride. Like it wasn't. It was a ride that was like, ride a little bit, eat a ton of food, ride a little bit more, eat a ton of food. Then at the end, it's like a for real, like big ass, Pacific Northwest food smorgasbord type situation, right? So, but it's good to set a target, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm figuring that part out. But like my targets right now is just kind of getting just back into basic bike shape, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause there's, I know like, at least for my own stuff with running, where it's like, people tell you like, don't clench your hands too much and like all this other stuff to keep, your body energy right. Like how you sit on your bike, how you hold your drops and shit, so that you're not expending energy in places where you're gonna need it later. How to figure out your own pacing, set intensity, and even just checking to make sure. Like one thing I need to do is, or I'd like to do is get a session with a bike fitter just to see, like, should I adjust, some things on my bike, positionally to make it a little better, for my body. I really, I've had this bike almost 15 years now, but it's a great bike. So, but I think I need some new pedals too. I feel like my clippings ain't clipping the way they supposed to. But so like today, literally this morning, I did, 16 miles, just to get an idea, like where I'm at, like, how fast can I ride,
right.
Am I, up to it, like, those sorts of things. But so I'm working on that. And then the other side outside of the thing, I'm going to be working on mobility, just general body mobility. So like some, strength work enough to like, make sure I'm getting good depth in my hips, getting some more movement in my ankles. And because that's the other thing, like I said, I like literally injured myself sitting in a bad chair under stress at the top of this year. And I'm like, I can't be out here with my legs feeling weird for the rest of my life because I sat in the chair when I was 45. It's just like, I can't let this fly. So, but like I said, the spring to me is often a better time to try to be getting out and about and doing your exercise than the middle of January, just for words of the wise. I'm not here though to be like, I want to go to the Copacabana and like show everybody my abs. Like that's not the goal of myself for personal fitness. But the goal of the fitness is the physical, like I say, the value of physical confidence, you know what I'm saying? That you can move, you can take care of yourself, your heart rate is still there. I was with a friend actually camping last weekend and was talking about, if you got to get in a scrap. And like, me, I'm training, I have a baseline reality of personal comfort with combat. But also, the problem is like, if I had to get like in a scrum, I'm not really in tip-top shape for a super duper scrum right now in my life. You know what I'm saying? And I need to know that. Like, I can't be lying to myself. Like, yeah, I'm ready for anything. Like, no, I'm not. I might be like, listen, brother, you right.
When Eddie Murphy did aggressive ways to pull back. And you know what? I'm gonna get out of here.
I'm gonna leave right now. You got this. You know what I'm saying? No disrespect intended. Like walk out with my shoulders up. You know what I'm saying? Like. But it's an important thing because I think we have a lot of problems sometimes. We got folks that are irrational physical confidence, so they think that they think that they the ones, like they're always ready for a scrap, and then sometimes they find out no, you wasn't, you wasn't ready for a scrap, my man. You should have shut up. You should have let that one go. And then also though, I think it. I've said for years, I think it's an impact in, particularly, and sometimes in the way law enforcement deals with people that you got some of them folks, they ain't got no physical confidence. So they got to go for they don't feel that they can handle it without going for something, you know what I'm saying? And then, and then you got other people that they, generally, which will lead to what we're going to talk about on the back end, but like sort of your mental set, your mindset around your mind and your body. And then the reality, right? Because, even if you think you're feeling good, and then you start moving and you realize, oh, snap, I am not in the shape I thought I was. You know what I'm saying? And that can shake you. You know what I'm saying? In a way, and it's not always just about an aesthetic look either, because the science on like skinny fat people, so to speak, not fat in the derogatory context, but in the context of like someone who appears to be skinny, so people assume that whatever positive concepts we assign to skinny are there versus some of the things we may assign to quote unquote fat. But the idea that basically folks have high visceral internal situations happening, like where they, around their organs, but they look slim. So everyone assumes they're healthy, but in actuality, they got high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high, diabetic or pre-diabetic, and all that. You can't just tell, it's not just an appearance thing. It's a reality of what's going on inside, your systems. And some of that is training and fitness, some of that is the mental well-being and other stuff, like high blood pressure and a lot of, other things are as much about stress and your mental situations as they are just what physically is happening with your body. So, it all integrates. And so, for the spring, I mean, I'm just trying to, get on the record. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to learn more about this race. What's Toronto half marathon?
Yeah. So join up in Toronto or get the name of the club, but I'll send it to you for the notes. Because all the races are back, right? Like so. The Brooklyn Marathon is taking place today. Boston was Monday. Paris was a couple weeks ago. Berlin's coming up. Tokyo, London. So all the different places are doing their respective races and everything like that. So it's also a framing. It helps you kind of get where you need to go and the togetherness of it, doing with thousands of other people. But so that's the goal. And again, I think just to put a punctuation mark on, I think what you shared, I think the point about the fitness and wellness is a bigger conversation than, although obviously the visual of it makes a lot of sense. It becomes a bigger thing, and the way we approach it is as important as what we're doing, right? So that everybody, just move. If you can, man, the best way to describe it is like, have some form of movement every day, right? Like that you're, moving your body, getting your heart rate up in some way, shape, form, or capacity, man, because, it literally without overstating it, our lives depend on it.
Right. So with that, an interview, I guess it was a few weeks ago, that I think actually sort of touches on some of these ideas that we had on it in regard to fitness, but in sort of the larger sense of, projection. Dame Dash was on the All the Smoke podcast with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. And it was a couple things. I mean, Dame Dash has become, a certain type of interview. I think at this point in the world where it's like, and not necessarily in a derogatory sense, but like what's Dame about to say next? You know what I'm saying? Like what angle, because Dame Dash, I would say, he has a challenging style of communication that I think for a lot of people, they would be like, damn, man, like, would feel intimidated and thrown off, quite frankly, by the way he jumps in and comes in, and he, as they say, strong position, strong, point of view, strong perspective. But there was a couple things that there's touched on in there, and, I want to defer to you on some of it, like to get framed. But the one thing I did want to start with, even he talked about, from the health perspective, and he's been very transparent about his managing of diabetes and whatnot. And him just saying like, I gotta eat this cake, I gotta do that stuff to make sure my situation is right, so I can even do this right now. You know what I'm saying? And he, was not bashful about taking that space for his health, right? Which I think is an interesting. There's a time in our society, especially in our community, where a man would not have done that in the eye of other people, right? And just be like, nah, I got to do this to make sure I'm straight, and y'all just got to deal with it, right? It would have been don't do the interview, or y'all just edit all that out. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I mean? I appreciate that he shares the truth of that part of his life, right? And that there's a work that goes with making sure he's straight so he can be productive, that I think is an important just touchstone that I wanted to start out with. But there was a whole bunch of other stuff in the conversation that I wanted to get to. So what was one of the things that that bubbled to the surface for you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a great one. I think you make a great point about, within reason, homie's whole life is you just see it, right? And I don't know if he wanted it to be like that or he just embraced it at some juncture, because of the nature of how he chooses to live his life. But as it even boils down to, then for I think Black and brown folks, or just folks of the original diaspora, and then specifically sometimes Black men, are intensely private, right? And so it's an interesting thing to watch someone who is as outspoken and brash not be intensely private. You know what I mean? I think there's not saying that people should be like that, but I think there's something to be said or to be thinking about what does it mean? Because often, we're taught as men to be intensely private, right? To the point of like being kind of mysterious, right? Dame Dash is nothing but mysterious. He ain't mysterious. So anyway, I want to start with, unfortunately, where everyone starts with, but I think this is an important part of it before we get into it.
Mm-hmm.
I have an assertion that there will be a point where we look at the split of Rockefeller Records as kind of influential in the business world and the cultural world as like when the Lehman Brothers didn't like split.
Mm-hmm.
Or different companies like, in the 1920s, like different titans. Been watching this show called Titans, and just talks about like all the different partnerships and folks that were together and they split up, and the Lehman Brothers was one,
Mm-hmm.
like over things they disagreed on, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would say that the quote unquote split of that gets you all the thing that is Jay-Z, so whatever that means to you in the world, right? And whatever you put to Jay-Z, right? Because Jay-Z, on the flip side, besides getting beat up in the elevator, and going through stuff with his woman, has been intensely private about how they do business, who's aligned, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
You get the Kanyes of the world. You get Kanye, and then all the things that have come from him. You get like the rappers, the Jim Jones, you get the clothing lines, you get all this kind of cultural touchstones that emerge from that space. And then I guess the thing that I'm touching on is you get this idea of how to do business, whether you take the Jay-Z route, which I would say is the kind of traditional American capitalist route. And I don't say that in a derogatory term, but as you build businesses, you create value and then you sell them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Jay-Z builds businesses, creates businesses, and sells businesses. Right? I mean, you can just watch it over and over again. Many of the companies they originally started are no longer around. They have no interest in them. I mean, Tidal's a great example, right? You buy Tidal, Samsung buys some of it, Square buys the rest of it. You're out of it, right? You create this champagne company that I've never had. I guess people say it's good. I can't tell. Ace of Spades, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like I've been places that they had it, but no waiters ever said, "Hey, you looking for a really good glass of champagne? You need some of the Ace of Spades, right?" Mm-hmm. You create it, you create the value, LVMH buys into it, right? So, I mean, he has like the traditional model, create 50-50 partnerships with Roc Nation, right? I mean, the whole thing, Live Nation, you get Rockefeller, Roc Nation. Then you have Dame Dash, who's doing like this, like ruggedly 100% ownership model.
Right.
Of like, even if it's, if it is worth this, it's 100% mine. I do what I want with it. I pivot to it, and just those two different models, I think, reflect somewhat of an idea you see in hip hop, but it also just in the broader Black community around entrepreneurship and business. And I just think it's an important place that we look at. Just like now, or at a certain point, you could attach so much to the idea of W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, right? Mm-hmm. And you could say, okay, here's where Du Bois was on this, and here's where Washington was on this, and that split created, or that difference created, a whole host of different things that emerged, right? I think in the same way, that split or that vision has set the tone for a whole bunch in businesses, and I think in, frankly, hip hop culture that, and I guess one day we'll interrogate the culture, but whatever.
Indeed.
so that's that. I do think it's important to kind of like historically give some context to that split and what that split represents, and how many people, and I'll say this quickly, how many people they really made important that may not have been as important prior to that. And I'll use that to say, like, to take people like Leo Cohen, Kevin Liles, Julie Greenwald, all the people who like were involved in Def Jam, who now all run the biggest record labels in the world. Mm-hmm. That was off the back of Jay-Z, DMX, Method Man, Redman. Like, straight, history just shows that they were able to be seen as creating that kind of value off the back of what Def Jam created between 1993 and 2000. And all those people are still running record labels based off of the stuff that happened. Yeah. So that's just what that is. My reflections on the interview, one of them I'll just go into is, I think, man, the interview showed me how much mentorship means in our community. Because I think the interaction with him and with Dame Dash and Steven Jackson just underscored the idea of, like, you could be doing really well, have your own shows, doing all these things, but like fundamentally, I mean, I say this with no disrespect, but usually something disrespectful follows. But I really say that, like, it was clear that Steven Jackson just hadn't been like mentored to even kind of access the stuff he wants to do, even as a successful basketball player and entrepreneur, right?
Right.
Like, you're sitting there, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because it was like, you have this show, you're on show that's like on Showtime, right? Like, so you started All the Smoke. I don't know the total trajectory of their podcast, but I remember they started it. I don't remember if them being on Showtime started before George Floyd in that time frame, and the way he stepped up, what I'm saying, really like on a sort of like national stage, community level wise, right? And and he was Captain Jack, and those that watch basketball know him from his sort of basketball prowess, what I'm saying, and something that I think is important that translates to this is like somebody whose thing on the court was talented, skilled, but also was willing to get into the mix for your team, right? And that as
an understatement.
As definitely an understatement, right? Is as an ethic and that commitment, poured out to Texas, what I'm saying, in the building type energy. And so even with that, right? So NBA vet, got a a nationally available, high enough profile, at least, podcast. And while on your own podcast and you talking, and someone that I would say would be safe to say admire and have respect for and see as, someone that was a aspirational person when you was a young person, right? Because they, you was high school kids when Rockefeller was becoming Rockefeller. So you look up to him, see them as sort of like, big brother, big, OG type time. Is in the room with you and he's challenging you because basically that, like, when you talking about like what you want to do and where you want to go, that you ain't have an answer. Like, you really didn't have an answer. Like, it wasn't even an answer like, yo, I'm doing it. I'm doing this podcast. I always wanted to have this space in the media and do and be able to talk about our perspectives and like you didn't have that in the can. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't have the elevator pitch in your can, in your pocket, and no disrespect. That's just a real observation, right? That to this point, either from internally with who, ever helps, y'all, however him and, Matt Barnes communicate about the show or how they do it, that nobody sat down and said, yeah, like, how would you explain this show to people? Like, what does this mean to you? Like, where does this fit in your life? Like, if this isn't, and then, when he started talking about wanting to go into acting, and Dame shit being like, well, let's just do it. What was, like, you talking about it like it ain't gonna happen. How you gonna be talking about it like it ain't going? And like, it was really, he just like, Dame just like took control of the room and shit. like, nah, hold up, man. Like,
right.
Like you ain't gonna be like, you, if you want to do something, you got to do it. And if you've never had somebody push you like that, right? At least, and especially like maybe outside the context of certain things, like just in a life way, where somebody's like pushing you on, like, well, you said you want to do what? All right, well, what? I mean, you got cameras in here, you got all the stuff, and then he started, he went right in, and it was clear that, like, they wasn't really ready for that. Like, they didn't see that coming. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Or if they did, they didn't do a good job of making it seem like they expected that. Like, it definitely was like, oh shit, we thought this interview was gonna go one way. We was gonna reminisce, and I was gonna have reminisce about hip hop in the 90s and and then getting busy, like how to be an entrepreneur, And it was like, nah, man, it went. James said, nah, we going deep. I mean, like, I'm gonna push you, and I think it's, if you've never had someone, especially as an adult, push you, on like your professional, or personal vision, or what you want to do with yourself, it can be freezing. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody really like square biz, like, so what are you doing? You're like, well, I'm out here, I'm trying to figure out, trying to pull it together. Like, nah, man, what are you doing?
like in that language, guys. And so even going into that language, and I think you made a good point, and that's why I use like mentorship, like not necessarily, you know what I mean? Like, because we assume if someone has gotten to a place, man, they got money, they got it figured out.
Right, like they already won.
Right? Yeah. They've already won. But that doesn't mean that emotionally or even you're fulfilled professionally, because what you got doesn't always mean what you want. Right. And so him pressing him and being irrepressible and how he's pressing him.
Yeah.
In response to this thing is like the challenge that I'm going to submit that a lot of Black men at certain times don't get anymore. Right. They don't get that challenge by somebody, that they need to get in order to continue to grow. So we may assume that once you become a quote unquote adult, that you don't need a big homie / old head / OG, wherever part of the country you're from. You know what I mean? And need that mentorship and need that level of pressing. And if it happens from someone your age or someone younger, then that's fine too. Right. But it needs to happen in that level of challenge. And I really thought it was striking how what Dame Dash was saying, maybe the way he does it is one way, but he's really talking about a broader sense of emotional freedom, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he's framing wealth differently than I think in a very consumer-oriented space that they helped create, right? Like, be clear, Rockefeller world took the Harlem and uptown culture and Brooklyn culture of a certain time and created it for the world and commodified it for the world. right? Just like Diddy did for kind of Harlem, another part of Harlem culture that we've talked about before. But it's clear now he's defining happiness and wealth in different ways. And it was just interesting to watch on a show being challenged to redefine what your own goals could look like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, whether it happens outside or whether it happens inside, we all can benefit from that prompting of growth, that prompting of a challenge that allows us to see kind of like go beyond what we've been thinking to where we need to go, right? We talk about doing that for young people, but then we assume that once you're 25 years old, then you no longer need it.
Right. You're good. You should be good. You should have did a certain set of things that now you just play out the rest of the string. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to. There's no check-ins, no pivots, no curves, no nothing. You good. You got a degree, or you did this. You went to you in the trade union. All right, you good. Enjoy the rest of the next 70 years of your life.
Of your life, right? Go on a trip every year,
right?
And call it a day. Which is also just a big part of, again, the commodification of our lives as defined as like, okay, once you get to this place and you're doing this thing, then you're good to do this thing. So then if someone wants to give you another show or give you another show, or give you a sneaker, it's fine. Like keep doing that versus I want to be an actor and I've never taken the time or gotten the mentorship from someone to think about how I can go be an actor. And if it takes somebody brash and kind of like Dame Dash to come on and even help you engage your possibilities. Right. It just speaks to the fact that like whatever we're at, no matter what we're doing and maybe our growth that's never it, right? It's like floors and ceilings, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the ceiling ain't really a ceiling. Sometimes the ceiling's a floor for another conversation, right. But you have to be able to see that.
Yeah. It's something, and it's akin that I think, and it's something I appreciate about Dame Dash, and that I think that I wonder, and because I don't have a ton of evidence of how folks feel about it. I mean, generally, my general assumption is that sometimes folks look at men like Dame Dash negatively, or don't like his style. Like, oh man, he cool, but he always seem like he, coming at people, or, whatever, when people be sensitive and stuff, they be like, oh.
But let me say this really quick, and I want to give it a context. Ari Emanuel, who was Ari Gold on the Entourage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is legendary for being an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Like legendary. They didn't make too much of a caricature of himself when they did the movie. Right. You know what I mean? There's a thing I was reading and say if you get less than 3 F-bombs out of him, he's been like a monk, right? But I'm saying like that is fully accepted in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But Dame Dash idea of being relentless and being the way he is in some ways as a black man, like that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
And so I think at some point we have to interrogate why those things are not acceptable. Right. Now, there's one thing to say, okay, Ari Emanuel nor Dame Dash is acceptable. I mean, that's just a different conversation. But the fact that Ari Emanuel is known for that has been able to build a multi-billion-dollar company where then Dame is framed as, because Dame's like that, he can't do business.
Right. And then there's a, tying back to the split, so to speak, there's a subtext whenever he's on in the public space that there's some sort of like who's winning, Dame or Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? And I think, to their credit, I don't think they necessarily want that, but we do that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we do that. You know what I mean? Kind of tying back to our national nightmare of the slap of we got to pick a team, we got to pick a side, we got to decide one is good and one is bad, or one is out or one is in or whatever. And which has a lot more to do with, sort of the, I'll say the white gaze of that, which one of these black folks is the acceptable one, and then the broader kind of like gaze of I'll call it maybe sort of the social cultural, the economical machine that is American capitalism, that, well, one of these two must be a loser if one has more or less, or is less, connected to what we might assume to be the mainstream, so to speak, of American business. But the thing that I was going towards was that Dame has a very clear like idea that for him of what success means, right? And you touched on it, that like, I want to own it. And then I want to challenge. Like, I don't, and I appreciated him really pushing on, like, because sort of what was also in that exchange with him and Steven Jackson was sort of like, what defines you as being a successful actor, right? Where in Dave's mind is like, if you acted in some movies, you an actor. Right now, Steven Jackson, whether subtext or, subconsciously or consciously, it was sort of like, well, don't you got to be like in a movie in a theater, or like, on a block, like I'm not really an actor unless I'm in one of these. Now, he may not have, may not have been prepared for that question to thought about it that far, right? Where he could articulate his vision, you know what I'm saying, or his thought around what it would mean for him to be a successful actor. But that's important. That sometimes is the challenge for our community, right? That like, we don't always aren't clear about what the win is, but we be real clear about what the loss is. Right. So we'll be thinking about the loss, like what is not the win, right? But we won't be on the other side, like, well, what is the win, right? So if I had decided, like, I want to foray back into the world of music, and I'm gonna make a 4-song little project, right? There's a success of making the project, right? That would be, just as a creative product, would be like, yeah, I did it. Now, if I was not clear about my, like, I want, millions of people. Do I want millions of people to listen to this? Do I need anyone to listen to it? Do I just need to make it and say and know that I did it? Right. But I need to make sure I'm clear about what the win is. Because otherwise, people hit you with the, oh man, you over there doing your little music thing. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right, your little thing. That's right.
Your little thing, you over there doing your little thing. Like, hold up, man, why you throwing salt on my, I feel like you're throwing salt on my game right now. Like, I was real proud of what I did. Right.
But just to add on,
yeah,
you touch on a very poignant point here. Because everything is so commodified, right? If something is not blowing up, whatever that means,
right,
then why did you do it?
Right.
And if your art is not fully commodified, was it worth making? Or if it hasn't been given critical review, not just by white folks, but maybe by some other form, or depending on what it is, was it worth doing? Right now, that obscures. It is a whole. I mean, if you're into the money as success conversation, if that frames it, there's a whole bunch of really rich people that you've never seen and do things that are not considered successes in the broader kind of world. Mm-hmm. But they succeed. They succeed in making money. If that was how you were framing it, there was that conversation around Tyler Perry that produces art that, different people have takes on, right? Mm-hmm. Like they have takes on what that art looks like, but it clearly still rings a bell and does very well. Right. And so, so that's one thing. And the other thing is just, to your point, the over commodification, and sometimes this idea that if it wasn't done by a major studio, that it wasn't like quality, right? That for some reason it didn't have the level of being good that like doing the X-Men or Avengers was good. Like you were a better actor if you were an X-Men or Avengers than you would be in your own movie that you made. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think, to your point, it brings us to say we know the absence of more than we know the presence of.
Yeah. And I think it's really, and it's just, personally, this is something I've been, walking with and thinking about, with with the work that I do right now and other things, just like how I direct myself within the community space and how I even direct myself with what I'm with the things I spend my time on. When it comes to certain things around our lives as Black folks, sometimes we've been, there was a time in my life when I sort of identified myself with like the struggle and like whatever that, however you constituted that at the time of like, the destruction of America and I'm gonna be who I am. And then there was a point where I realized I was like, I can't define Justice, Rajee, only by sort of this struggle against, this, Sisyphean, is that a word? Can I use that? Like, obstacle, Sisyphean, engagement with the world. Because now it means like myself only exists or only has evidence of my existence, like a quark or whatever, by when I'm touching the thing, where I'm fighting with the thing. And I'm like, that thing ain't the thing. I'm the thing. Like I'm the one. I'm the sound and the light and the fury in this joint. Like I'm cool. Like, hold up. Let me adjust my perspective. And to a degree, and there's a place for, fighting for something that you might not live to see and understanding a sense of time and place with how you spend your time and who you are in the world. Right. But also like, I want to win at stuff. Like I'm not fulfilled necessarily in all the aspects of my life by being like, well, we fought so hard for so long. And maybe like, I want some W's. I want some like, yo, we like, that happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm saying for, just in person, like I want to have children. I have the children. They're there. Like those are the people that I created. You know what I'm saying? I was part of the team. You know what I'm saying? We worked together. You know what I mean? Somebody, obviously partner did a lot more of the internal work. You know what I mean? But I was there on the scene. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? I've been there the whole time. I mean, we lived.
That's right.
Like, it's the reality is here. It's not theoretical. It's actual. You know what I'm saying? And when it comes to like, doing things creatively, our professional work, or the community work and spaces they've shown up in, is like, I'm not excited by the idea of like, we're going to go outside and just be fighting for some
and try really hard
forever. I'm like, nah, man, what do we win? What do we want to win? Right. How do we see our sense of, again, like success? Like, so if you say like, I want to, like, because we said success is a fantasy. We said it was a fantasy. He said, I want to be a success. Oh, that's an emotion. That's not an outcome. Like that's not right. That ain't a, like, what do you mean? Like you need to be clear. Right. And I think it is vitally important. And I think it's something that sometimes, at times in your life, you can be motivated to do something that's challenging for you by sort of like the unclear, ambiguous kind of like, oh, I want to be successful. I got to do this. Right. But but there becomes those break points where you got to really assess, because when it gets really, really hard with certain things in life, once your brain really, this is, just as, armchair psychologist, when your brain realizes the thing that you're fighting for really ain't real, but you still trying to make it, like, parts of, you start spinning off. You start, taking a little extra time with the games, or start missing some meetings because there's the other part of your brain is like, yo, that ain't the win, right? Like, you fighting all hard for this shit that ain't the win. Let's see how long this goes. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's really important that, and I appreciate again about Dame Dash, is that like his thing is, I want to own certain things, and if I'm not doing that, and I really appreciate what he said, I don't want these people patting me on the back like they helped me to be, I guess it being a Harlem dude, I would say the cultural thread of like, I'm not defined by y'all, that I think is near and dear to, to our cultural foundation of like, I'm the definer. No, you don't define me. Like, you don't need you coming up here act like you went and did what I did to be who I am. And like now, you're like, oh, we're all together. Like, nah, we ain't all together, dog. Like, I don't know you like that. Like, back up. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we doing business together and we partners on an adventure, that's great. Or, work together on a community effort, that's great. But don't be patting me on the back like you know who I am and fully understand my reality, because you don't. Like, you're not us. You know what I'm saying? And ease back, let me do my thing, and in a sense of really being comfortable in our own skin, comfortable in our own definitions of the world. You know, it it is really important to me, Lee, I think, to have a sense of fidelity to your own values, that you can go, I'm trying to do this. Here's my base goalpost. Other things could be a success too. Like, other things could be great benefits from this work, but I know I've done it if I did this. You know what I'm saying? I know I've hit the mark if I've done that. And if you've never had sort of the mentoring environment or a space where somebody pushed you to be specific like that, it's shocking, because a lot of our world runs on like sort of open-ended motivational, hoi polloi that ain't really asking for any rigor. It's just like, yeah, you got to believe and just work hard and and they'd be like, wait a minute, how do you know when you won? You're like, I don't know when I won.
Right. Well, that's the thing. First, I want to give you props on hoi polloi. I just want to let you know that, as a fellow lover of words and lover of terms, that was really well placed. Yeah, man, that was great. But I think that's the other part, and it ties back to the interview. What do you want? I want to be a success. Like, well, no. What does that mean? Right. And it's the other part of everyone watching the Mamba mentality TikToks and like clips, but not being clear that being a success for Kobe Bryant meant I'm scoring 30 no matter how many shots I take. We're going to win. I'm going to choke all of you. Right. Like, it's a Mamba for a reason.
Right. I'm one of the best on-ball defenders within 2 to 3 years of being in the league. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't just
I'm going to shut this person down. Right. It's not open-ended motivation, not towards a result. Right. And the result doesn't have to be, again, according to the broader commodification of what success looks like.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because, hey, let's say you do create a league that's not the NFL. Well, that's cool. It doesn't have to be the NFL. Right. There are soccer games. There are a whole bunch of soccer leagues that are not MLS, and MLS is not the Premier League.
Right.
But that doesn't make MLS not successful.
Right.
Because it's not as big as Manchester United playing Liverpool.
Exactly.
And so we have to utilize that in our own lives, in our own communities, and frame what we think successes are. And again, get out that idea of your little, right? AKA your little program, your little
project you got going on.
Your little project you're working on versus someone creates something and they iterate it. And the fact that they created, and especially, again, going back to, we're two black men talking. So obviously, as black men talking, we're talking about stuff that connects to black men. That's why I came from Oldhead, right? However, obviously, and people should always connect it to whoever may be listening, of whatever gender or orientation, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? You should extend it to themselves. But it is really important for black men to frame what success looks like outside of world, that often the definitions of what winning looks like has been given to you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. And given by worlds and structures, frankly, not going into the struggle mentality, but given by structures that weren't always looking out for your best interest.
Right.
So identifying what success is, doing that, claiming that, being real about it, and doing it outside of a gaze, I think becomes kind of more important than ever. You know what I mean? And I think people, again, say what they will about Dame, but I think he's been willing to do that. He's been willing to stand on it. That's what matters to him. And he's been willing to stand on at some point. He no longer wants to be in business in the ways that he was in business before. And that doesn't make him less of a success, because he no longer wants to be in business with the people he was in business in prior.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, with that, I would, put the link, advise folks to check out the show, check out that episode. I think, because especially, again, like I said, Dame as interview person has become sort of a certain experience. And then I think certain people are expecting a certain thing, and not to say that it wasn't that thing, but I thought that the dynamic in the way that conversation shifted was really, 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 really poignant. And thank you for catching it and sharing it. And in tune with the start end of this conversation. Like I said, the be the definer, you know what I'm saying, of what your wins are. You know what I'm saying? And then go get the win. go.
That's right. That's right. Go win.
With that, anything else is for the good of the order?
For the good of the order, my man.
All right. So with that,
everybody just check out Hoi Polloi. Go look at it, man. I'm telling you, this guy's a word. He's a word wizard, man. Y'all should, man. I thought I was reading Baldwin, or man, Sonia Sanchez or some shit.
Oh, well, I'll say that for another conversation. I've been doing some reading, the last 2 weeks. But with that, I would say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Thank you to you for listening. As always, if you want to support the podcast, the number one thing you can do is share. Number two, and I guess maybe right up there, like 1B, is go wherever you listen to podcasts and rate and subscribe to the podcast so it will make this discoverable for other folks. You can also become a patron on Patreon. Just search up Justice Rajee and you will find my page, and you'll see the Ask Your Oldhead logo and some other things over time. But in any event, I appreciate you, and until next time we come together, be safe. Peace.